What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Windy City Politics and History channel. In today's video, we are going to be taking a look for the month of May at the 2023 gubernatorial elections. For those of you that have been subscribed for a while, and just a quick reminder, if you are not subscribed, please remember to hit the subscribe button so you can be notified whenever I post new content, so you can watch the video if you want to. But if you've been subscribed for a while, you know that I've been following the 2023 gubernatorial elections, and what I've been doing on this channel is I've been taking a look at these elections every month, and we're going to be continuing to take a look at these elections every month up until the day before Election Day in November. And there are 3 states which hold gubernatorial elections in 2023, and those are the states of Kentucky, where the current governor, incumbent Andy Beshear, a Democrat, is seeking re-election to a second term. He was first elected in 2019 with 49.2% of the vote, defeating then-Governor Matt Bevin, a Republican, by 0.4 percentage points. The second state that has a gubernatorial election in 2023 is the state of Mississippi, where incumbent Republican Governor Tate Reeves is seeking a second term despite low approval ratings, that is, where he defeated in 2019 then State Attorney General Democrat Jim Hood by around 5 points. And the final state which holds a gubernatorial election in 2023 is the state of Louisiana, where Democratic incumbent Governor John Bel Edwards is term limited and therefore ineligible to seek a third term. So we're going to start off by talking about Louisiana, because I think this is the least interesting out of the 3 gubernatorial races, and all 3 major political predictors, the Cook Political Report, Inside Elections, and Sabato's Crystal Ball, categorize Louisiana as in the Republican column. 2 categorize it as lean Republican, and 1 categorizes it as likely Republican. And we're going to take a look at Louisiana here. In the way Louisiana elections work statewide is they do a jungle primary, which is where all candidates, regardless of party affiliation, appear on the same ballot, and if no candidate receives a majority of the vote, then the top 2 candidates will advance to a runoff election. So the front runner for the Republicans, the Republican who is currently drawing the most support, is current State Attorney General Jeff Landry, who is a Republican, and he has recently been endorsed by Donald Trump, which I think will essentially make him the front runner for the Republicans. Even though both the Republicans and the Democrats appear on the same ballot, I think Jeff Landry will receive the highest percentage of the Republican vote, and as you can see here, he is receiving 36% of the vote, and no other Republican is even coming close. And then Shawn Wilson, the Democrat, is the former Louisiana Secretary of Transportation, I believe, and he is receiving 25% in one poll and 18% in the other poll, with the biggest fluctuation being voters who are undecided. So in a state like Louisiana, it's a very Republican state, undecided voters are going to break more towards the Republicans. So right now, Jeff Landry is sitting at 35%, 36%. Shawn Wilson is sitting at 18 to 25%, and the undecided voters are anywhere in the range from 23 to 29%. So what I'm taking a look at here, what I'm seeing here is that if it is just Jeff Landry and Shawn Wilson, which it isn't, I guess there's other candidates on there receiving 17%. So it looks like Jeff Landry isn't getting an outright majority in the polling as of yet. But all he needs for an outright majority is 50% plus 1 vote. So if even 14% of those undecided voters break for Jeff Landry, then he completely avoids the runoff, and he'd automatically win by a safe margin because he'd be receiving 51% of the vote, and all the other candidates would be receiving significantly lower shares of the vote because it is a jungle primary. The same happened for Louisiana Senator John Kennedy, who was reelected in 2022. He received in the high 50s or low 60% of the vote and completely avoided the runoff. So, and then looking at the hypothetical polling for the runoff, a generic Republican is receiving 50% and a generic Democrat is receiving 33%. So personally, I think that Louisiana, I've had it, is likely Republican, going to the runoff with Jeff Landry winning by 14, 57, 43. Right now, I think he gets an outright majority and it's safe Republican. I think he gets 51% in the first round and narrowly avoids the runoff. I think Sean Wilson gets around 35%, and other minor candidates combine for around 15%. And now moving on to Mississippi. And Mississippi, incumbent Governor Tate Reeves, a Republican, is running for re-election. He first defeated Democratic Attorney General Jim Hood in 2019, and if we go back to that, he defeated Jim Hood by around 5 points. And now looking at 2023, the Democrats did an extremely good job with candidate recruitment in this race, recruiting Brandon Presley, who is the Mississippi Public Service Commissioner for the Northern District, which is a Republican-leaning district, so he can win in a Republican-leaning district. And furthermore, Brandon Presley is a relative of Elvis Presley, the famous singer, and he is also the presumptive Democratic nominee, meaning the Democrats have avoided a contested primary here. The Republicans have avoided a heavily contested primary. Tate Reeves is dealing with low approval ratings, and there was speculation that Bill Waller Jr., the former Chief Justice of the Mississippi Supreme Court, was going to run against Tate Reeves in the Republican primary. He was the Republican primary opponent of Tate Reeves in 2019, and Tate Reeves defeated him. And then he said he was not going to run, so it's looks like Tate Reeves is going to be the nominee for the Republicans here. And then looking at the way this is playing out, is Brandon Presley is the only declared Democratic candidate. The other two have been disqualified, and it looks like Brandon Presley is going to win the Democratic nomination without any issues whatsoever. But here's the most significant thing. Brandon Presley raised $1.3 million and has $1.6 million cash on hand. So the Democrats are investing in this race. And Brandon Presley's fundraising is what is going to make him competitive here. Mississippi is a state that voted for Donald Trump by around 17 points in 2020, but Brandon Presley is definitely the correct candidate if Democrats want to flip this governorship. And all three political predictors rank this as likely are. And looking at the polling data, you have Reeves plus 7, Reeves plus 4, Presley plus 4, Reeves plus 7, Reeves plus 11, Reeves plus 3. And then you look at the hypothetical polling where Tate Reeves is facing off against a generic opponent, and you have generic opponent plus 24, generic opponent plus 24. And the generic opponent for Tate Reeves is getting 57 to 60% of the vote. So last month I categorized this as likely Republican. A few months before that, it was lean Republican. So as of right now, I think this is trending back towards the lean Republican direction. I think that it's still likely Republican as of right now. I think if the election were to be held today, Tate Reeves would win re-election by a similar margin to his victory in 2019 when he defeated Jim Hood by 5 points. I think it would be very similar to that. But I think this is definitely trending towards the Democratic Party, towards Brandon Presley. And I think as the election starts to heat up over the summer and into the fall, I think it's going to continue to trend in that direction, especially given Presley's fundraising numbers and Tate Reeves' low approval ratings. I do think the Republicans are going to come out on top here, but I think it will eventually end up as a lean margin, although right now I'm still putting it at likely because I feel with the polling data, the polling is still favoring Tate Reeves, even though he has low approval ratings and voters are obviously looking for a change. But I think as of right now, it's still low likely Republican. And now moving on to the final state for the 2023 gubernatorial elections, and that is the state of Kentucky. Incumbent Democratic Governor Andy Beshear defeated then Republican Governor Matt Bevin in 2019. Andy Beshear is the former Attorney General of the state of Kentucky and the son of Steve Beshear, who is the former governor. And you could argue that Kentucky is the marquee gubernatorial race in 2023. This is the state where both parties are going to spend the most money in 2023. And the Republicans had a formidable opponent for Andy Beshear in State Attorney General Daniel Cameron. Daniel Cameron, looking at the polling, was the candidate who was doing the best against Andy Beshear. And Andy Beshear was still beating him by 9 points in this polling conducted back in January. But when you look at the other Republican candidates, Kelly Craft, who is currently polling just behind Daniel Cameron, Andy Beshear is winning by 25 points. And I think Andy Beshear would beat either Daniel Cameron or Kelly Craft, although I think Daniel Cameron would be more competitive. And looking at the way the Republican primary is trending, and keep in mind, how competitive this gets is going to be dependent on who the Republican nominee ends up as. And back in June of 2022, Daniel Cameron was polling at almost 50%, although that number has dropped by 16 points now to 30%, whereas Kelly Craft was starting at 3%, and now she's polling at 24%. She's the former United Nations ambassador under Donald Trump. And then you look at the fundraising and cash on hand numbers, and you see that Daniel Cameron has raised $1.3 million and has about $500,000 cash on hand, whereas Kelly Craft has raised $8.5 million and Ryan Quarles has raised $1.2 million. And looking at this is a very competitive Republican primary, and the Democratic primary is not competitive at all. Andy Beshear just has a few token challengers, and he also has $7.4 million cash on hand to spend on his campaign. And looking at that, it looks like Andy Beshear is in a good position to win re-election here. I think Kelly Craft is going to come out on top in the primary. I think that's the way it's trending. The primary is a week from today, so I'm probably going to make a video summarizing that next week. But I think she is going to win the primary, and right now she is polling 25 points behind Andy Beshear. And even if Daniel Cameron were to win the primary, he's still polling 9 points behind Andy Beshear. And Andy Beshear is a Democrat statewide elected official, governor, in a state that Donald Trump carried by 25 points in 2020. Or maybe it was slightly narrower margin than that. But in a safe Republican state. And he also has a 60% approval rating. Andy Beshear has a 60% approval rating. He is one of the most popular governors nationwide, and I think he is in a very good position to win re-election here. And I think Mississippi is going to end up as more competitive than Kentucky, although I think both parties end up investing more money in Kentucky. And last month I categorized Kentucky as likely Democratic for the first time, and this month I'm keeping it as likely Democratic. Now, if Kelly Craft ends up as the nominee, I think Andy Beshear wins by 10 to 12 points. If Daniel Cameron ends up as the nominee, I think Andy Beshear wins by 3 to 5 points. And as of right now, I'm keeping it as likely Republican because I believe that Kelly Craft is going to end up as the Republican nominee. I'm keeping it as likely Democratic because I believe that Kelly Craft is going to end up as the Republican nominee. If Daniel Cameron wins the Republican nomination, wins the Republican primary, I would consider moving it back to leans Democratic, but as of right now, I think Andy Beshear is in a very good place to win his re-election campaign, and for that reason, Kentucky is likely Democratic. So to summarize the results and the changes from last month, Louisiana has shifted from likely Republican to safe Republican, meaning the Republicans will flip the governorship of Louisiana with Republican Jeff Landry being elected governor. Mississippi remains in the likely Republican column with Tate Reeves, a Republican, being reelected to a second term. And Kentucky remains in the likely Democratic column with incumbent Democratic governor Andy Beshear being reelected to a second term. Thank you for watching the video. Please remember to like and subscribe and hit the bell so you can be notified whenever I post new videos. I hope you all have a great day. Once again, just please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video.